Sword Art Online Alicization is starting in a week. We'll see a young Kirito, a normal-aged Kirito, new characters, old characters, and Kirito collapsing. But what happened up until this point in the series? Some of you probably have watched the original series years ago, some of you haven't watched specific parts or maybe just forgot. I know for a fact that many people haven't even watched Ordinal Scale movie, which had the first teaser for an Alicization anime. In this series, I'll be shortly going over the entire adventure as well as marking important points that you need to keep in your mind for Alicization. In the process, I'll also mention certain things that were not explained in their entirety in the anime and clear some misconceptions. This is the journey so far, Road to Alicization. Now, these videos are gonna be more kind of lightning rounds. I'll essentially be summarizing huge plot points in a very short and concise manner, but without further ado, let's talk about Aincrad in this video. We start all the way from the beginning, November 2022, when Kirito dives into Sword Art Online, and after mere hours, they learn that they cannot leave Aincrad before clearing the game, which turns the virtual SAO into their real daily life. Sharing a bond with Klein early on, he offers to take Klein with him and let the two of them gain a lead on others based on his experience from the beta, but Klein refuses due to not wanting to leave his guildmates. Klein returns the offer to Kirito to join them instead, but Kirito refuses due to his lacking self-confidence at protecting an entire party rather than just a single person. This is a decision he regrets for a very long time, pretty much for the entirety of Aincrad. A month into Aincrad though, 2,000 people have died without progressing to the second floor, but a raid meeting is being held after someone discovered the first floor boss room. Kirito and Asuna party up, who have met before this meeting as retconned by the progressive rewrite, contrary to the current stance of the anime. Kibao, who would later become an influential figure in the future in terms of guilds in Aincrad, started to fuel the fire of the clash between the beta testers and new players. This culminated in Kirito stepping up at the end of floor 1 boss battle, where he got the final attack bonus on Ilfang, whereas Diavel died, and becoming the scapegoat for all their hate rather than beta testers being blamed for things. About 5 months later, in April 2023, we saw Kirito making some close friends with a non-clearer guild, Moonlit Black Cats, after his isolated run due to being known as the beater in front lines. He joins the guild upon their invitation, but keeps his level information hidden. While he grows close with them, especially Sachi, on one unfortunate day, the party jumps into a trap as Keita, the guild leader, was busy purchasing a guild headquarters. None of them can teleport out as the room is an anti-crystal area, and Kirito can't save any of them, including Sachi. After being devastated as is, he goes back and tells what happened to Keita, but Keita swears at Kirito as he calls him a beater and jumps down into the void outside of Aincrad, ending his game for good. This entire series of events scar Kirito deeply, but 8 months later, in December 2023, a rumor spreads that a revival item will be the reward of a special event. Kirito comes across Klein, and while Klein offers help, Kirito refuses so he can get the revival item for himself to bring back Sachi, and mentions that he would do quote-unquote whatever necessary to ensure he gets the item, which is mirrored by someone that we will talk about in part 5 of this series. Luckily, he doesn't need to do anything bad to Klein, as Dragon Knight Alliance arrives on the scene as well, and Klein, along with his guild Furin Kazan, stay back to push them back. Kirito defeats the boss, but learns that the revival item is only usable within a time limit after a death. Mentally defeated, Kirito leaves the item to the hands of Klein and returns home, where he receives a surprise recording from Sachi from the time before her death, with her farewell and appreciation for everything Kirito has done for her so far. 2 months later, February 2024, Kirito uses Silica as bait to apprehend the player-killing guild Titan Sand upon the request of a desperate player in town begging for help. Not for vengeance, mind you, but for justice for his friends who were killed by Titan's hand. In the process, he forms a strong relationship with Silica, where she starts admiring Kirito as a big brother to look up to, with his strong sense of justice and determination to bring down the guild Titan Sand, as well as all the help he provided bringing back her familiar, Pina, who was Silica's kind of mental anchor in Aincrad, as she reminded her of a real-life cat that she was named after. Murder in the Safe Zone is also a side story similar to all the adventures so far, featuring a ploy that Asuna and Kirito have to solve together. While the episode is adapted differently than the novels, it still showcases the bonding between Kirito and Asuna. This episode also features certain people that will become very relevant later in the series: Laughing Coughing Guild members, Po, Red-Eyed Zaza, as well as Johnny Black. On June 2024, Kirito visits the blacksmith Lisbeth, which results in both of them going on an adventure to grab materials to be able to craft a brand new sword for Kirito. Lisbeth, who's generally stuck in her shop, grows feelings towards Kirito during their journey. As a sign of her love, she promises herself to craft the best sword she can and use that as a way to confess, but seeing the way Asuna acts towards Kirito, as well as knowing her opinions based on their previous chats, she realizes that she too has feelings for Kirito and decides to not get in between them. October 2024, Kirito comes back with a lucky haul, an S-class ingredient from the rare monster Ragu Rabbit. Asuna, having maxed her cooking skills recently, decides to cook it for a portion of the food, which starts the entire series of events, resulting in them partying together once more. Like their adventures on the first couple of floors, as well as the Elf War campaign that is expanded upon in the progressive novels, along with possibly many other adventures until now in the unexplored floors of Aincrad. And if you're interested in the original SAO novels or the floor-by-floor retelling of Aincrad, featuring a much more expansive look on the world, Amazon affiliate links to the novels will be in the description down below. But this partying together annoys Asuna's quote-unquote bodyguard Kuradil, and his actions in return annoy Asuna to an extent that results in a duel between Kirito and Kuradil. Realizing the threat of a formidable and fast opponent, Kirito decides that the best chance he has is not a direct assault, but rather a precision hit on Kuradil's weapon to ensure it gets broken. This humiliates Kuradil to a point that will cause significant issues to both of them in the future. But during their partying, Asuna and Kirito stumble upon the Floor 74 boss room along with its boss, Gleam Eyes, and proceed to run away rather than attempting to use their teleport crystals. While catching their breath, Asuna asks about the sword Kirito had Lisbeth forge for him and why he hasn't been using it. While Kirito was dodging the question, Klein and his guild Furin Kazan arrive, followed by the army, the guild also known as Aincrad Liberation Force, requesting Kirito's map data and proceeding to the boss room despite the warnings of Kirito, Asuna and Klein. Shortly after, screams started coming out from the boss room, and Kirito, Asuna and Furin Kazan rushed to the room to help, only to find the army in a not so favorable position, having only damaged slightly more than a quarter of his entire health pool. They suggested the army to use teleport crystals, but were shocked by the fact that the boss room was an anti-crystal area. This reminds Kirito of his memory of Moonlit Black Cats and how they got wiped when they got trapped in an anti-crystal area as well. Can't being able to come to terms with doing absolutely nothing as people were dying, Asuna rushed into the situation where she would likely not survive, and Kirito, Klein and the rest of Furin Kazan followed suit. The trio distracted Gleam Eyes while the other members of Klein's guild carried army members to safety. Finding himself in a desperate situation though, and the memory of Moonlit Black Cats pressuring him, Kirito decided it was time to reveal his unique skill that he had hidden away from everyone until now. With Klein and Asuna buying him time, Kirito drew the sword Lisbeth forged, the Elucidator, and proceeded to wield it on his other hand to supplement his Dark Repulsor. Almost dying in the process, Kirito used his unique dual blade skills to defeat Gleam Eyes with whatever HP it had left after the battle with the army, as well as with Kirito, Asuna and Klein prior to Kirito's dual wielding. After going back to the 55th floor, Kirito met with the leader of Asuna's guild, Knights of the Blood, Heathcliff. Asuna wanted to take a temporary leave from the guild, but he did not want to let go of his vice commander so easily, so he offered to allow it if Kirito managed to defeat him in a duel. Kirito accepts the challenge to duel him, but fails to come on top against Heathcliff's unique skill, the Holy Sword, that turned him into an almost impenetrable shield. But as he lost, Kirito catched onto an anomaly as Heathcliff moved a tiny bit too fast for a sliver of a second to block one of Kirito's attacks that he thought would definitely connect and seal the duel in his favor. Kirito didn't dwell on this fact for the time being and joined Knights of Blood as part of his agreement. After he joined Knights of the Blood, Kirito was forced to participate in a team building exercise led by Godfrey to solve their previous dispute with Kuradil. But during this training session, Kuradil paralyzed both Godfrey and Kirito, as well as the third member that was featured in the novels but was omitted in the anime. Kuradil proceeded to shatter Godfrey into polygons and impaled Kirito with his sword. Just as he was about to lose the remaining bits of his HP, Asuna arrived on the scene at a speed that supposedly exceeds the limits put in by the game, and this won't be the only instance in the series where someone overwrites the system rules. Asuna pushes Kuradil back and turns his back to him after he surrenders and apologizes in a pathetic manner, but just as she does so, Kuradil attacks Asuna behind her back, where Kirito has to intervene with a close quarters combat skill using his bare hands and kills Kuradil on the spot. Asuna, crying, apologizes because she held herself responsible for the entire situation, but Kirito stops her by kissing her. They spend the night together and decide to marry on floor 22 and got permission from Heathcliff to temporarily leave the guild. Their honeymoon on floor 22 was not eventless though, as they come across a little girl with no player or NPC cursor for that matter. They decide to help her until they solve the mystery revolving around her. In the meanwhile, they got close to each other as well, as Yui started to refer the newlywed couple as Mama and Papa. To find answers regarding her real guardians in the game, they went back to the town of beginnings on floor 1, but they discovered that the army was harassing the residents and abusing their power. Asuna drove them off, but suddenly Yui started panicking and something like a glitch occurred, leaving Yui unconscious as she cried out very loudly. To ask questions regarding Yui's guardians, they headed to the orphanage run by a player, but learned that Kibao had corrupted the army and put the current leader, Thinker, in a trap that he can't escape from the arriving Yuliar, Thinker's friend, visiting the orphanage. Kirito and Asuna helped her save Thinker, but found themselves facing a very powerful boss-type enemy, the Fatal Sight. When Fatal Sight was about to defeat the duo, Yui stepped out of the safe zone and shocked Kirito and Asuna, as the boss's attack on Yui was met with an immortal object sign. Yui proceeded to destroy the boss with her object eraser sword and explained that she was a mental health counseling program that was left dormant by the system overseeing the game, Cardinal, and that she no longer could bear the negative emotions in the game, and how she got out and found Kirito and Asuna. But now that she made her presence known with her admin privileges from the admin console in the safe room, Cardinal had already attempted to seize and delete her. As Yui disappeared, Kirito reached out to the admin console Yui had activated earlier and copied her data onto an in-game item. Keep in mind that Kirito did not hack anything in this instance, as most people tend to believe. Due to the anime's poor portrayal of the admin console, he merely used the console that was already opened up earlier by Yui. He also did not have the privileges to lock people out, as Yui's account did not have those privileges either in the first place. He did not hack any more than a 10-year-old who found somebody's Facebook account logged in on a school computer and posted, "I hacked this person." Soon after, the duo get called back to the front lines as the floor 75 boss room was discovered and the boss raid was commencing. The battle seemed really hopeless, as the floor 75 boss, the Skull Reaper, had already killed a bunch of clearer players, but with Heathcliff's leadership, the group managed to pull through despite the losses. Looking at Heathcliff after the battle, Kirito realized that, once again, despite the devastating battle, Heathcliff had not dropped to yellow HP. Remembering his duel with him, Kirito took a gamble, grabbed his sword and suddenly attacked Heathcliff, catching him off guard, and was met with an immortal object warning at the tip of his sword. With his secret blown, Heathcliff introduced himself as Kayaba Akihiko, paralyzed everyone in the room, and explained he would be waiting for them inside the Ruby Palace as the floor 100 boss. But before leaving, he offered Kirito a chance, a one-on-one duel with no tricks, no system assist, a fair duel. If Kirito won, the game would be cleared then and there. Kirito naturally accepted. He apologized from Klein for that very first day when he left him and his friends behind. Klein, crying, refused his apology and shouted that he would not accept the apology until Kirito treated him to a meal in the real world. Kirito accepted. He apologized from Egil for his jokes about him being a greedy merchant and told him that he knew Egil shared his revenue with mid-range players to help them improve their chances in Aincrad. Asuna begged him not to fight, but Kirito could only apologize. Kirito asked for one condition before the duel, and Heathcliff accepted to prevent Asuna from killing herself if Kirito could not see the end of the duel. As the fight got more and more heated, Kirito lost his focus for a moment and activated his ultimate dual blade skill, the Eclipse, a long 27-hit sword skill that he wasn't able to cancel midway, with all the hits parried by Heathcliff, leaving Kirito defenseless in his post-skill delay. Heathcliff about to land the finishing blow, Asuna snapped out of her paralyze out of nowhere and blocked Heathcliff's attack with her own body, saving Kirito and dying in the process in his arms. Shocked by the turn of events and Asuna getting rid of her paralysis before the system allowed her to, Heathcliff just stood still. Grabbing Asuna's lambent light, Kirito swung the sword with no weight, as if he had just lost the meaning of his life with the loss of Asuna. Pitying for Kirito's circumstances, Kayaba struck with a sword to Kirito's body. In his final moments, memories flashed in front of Kirito's eyes. Imagined himself dying and shattering into polygons, and then he remembered Asuna's words of encouragement. Kirito lost all of his HP, but did not shatter into polygons immediately. He rejected the judgment the system put on him, much like Asuna had overwritten it multiple times previously. For the mere seconds he extended his existence, he stabbed Kayaba back and both shattered into polygons immediately after. A system announcement was heard all around Aincrad. The game had been cleared as of November 7, 2024 at 2:55 PM. For clarity's sake here, Kirito was the one overwriting his death for a handful of seconds. The revival item he gave Klein about an entire year ago was most certainly used long before and had absolutely no role in this scene. Before killing Heathcliff, Kirito only imagined that he was dead. He had not died in the game at that point. After the fight, Kirito opened his eyes on a transparent platform somewhere way above Aincrad, confused as to what is going on. The voice of Asuna called to him from his back. He turned back and there she was. He apologized for dying and not being able to get her back to the real world. They hugged and watched Aincrad as it crumbled apart in front of their eyes. Suddenly, Kayaba Akiko appeared in his real life looks before their eyes. He told that Kirito had won, that Aincrad was now in its logout phase with the surviving 6,147 players being logged out, while reminding that death was irreversible, whether in real life or in Aincrad, as the 3,853 players were gone forever, and that he wanted to have a chat with the two to clarify things before he was gone. Kirito asked why he did all of this, and Kayaba mentioned that during the entirety of 2 years in the grand adventure that was Sword Art Online, even he sometimes forgot why he started all of this, getting caught up in the moment, but then answered that a castle floating up in the sky where people lived that surpassed all laws and restrictions of the real world had always been his dream, his desire to create this place. He disappeared into thin air afterwards, leaving the duo to spend their last moments together, not letting them know of their fate. They shared their age and their real names with each other as they awaited the end. Kirito started crying to apologize to Asuna once again for not being able to send her back to the real life. Asuna comforted him that the time she spent together with him on Aincrad were filled with the happiest moments of her life. They kissed as they both faded into nothingness. Kirito opened his eyes. He felt a severe overload in his sensory organs. The visuals, the humming of the air conditioner, the feeling of the air. While he was confused as to where he was after not having so much data reaching his brain for 2 years, he remembered Asuna, his promise to her. He realized he woke up in a hospital room, proceeded to take out his nerve gear around his head, mustered up all the strength he could and grabbed the IV drip stand and proceeded to head out in search of Asuna. And that brings us to the end of Aincrad. Thank you very much for watching, and you can subscribe and hit the bell for the rest of the series. Amazon affiliate links for relevant material can be found down in the description, such as SAO light novels, progressive light novels, and SAO Blu-ray editions. Feel free to check out my Patreon account to get exclusive benefits, and follow me on Twitter for the fastest news regarding SAO. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.